have never seen this before, as the playoff race in both the Eastern and the Western Conference, and both for the wildcard spots and the divisional leads, are still up for grabs, and this has fans around the league absolutely fired up because their team is probably still in the mix. We're going to break it down in this episode of Hattrick HQ, but before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 72% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel, so if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening around the NHL as this playoff race continues to heat up and heading into the playoffs, it's free. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. But Casey, this playoff race has been the craziest one, honestly, I can remember being a fan of this league and watching hockey, and it's been absolutely unbelievable. And there's been a few good ones over the last couple of years, but this one really seems like it's going to come down to the last day and maybe the last game, and I feel like 4 or 5 teams are going to be in the mix all the way down the stretch. But let's dive right into it. This has been a pretty crazy season. When you look at some of the playoff odds, and I want to get your thoughts on this because obviously you have some invested interest with the team here who has some of the highest percentages to make the playoffs, but it's very interesting down the stretch here. And the fact that the Islanders are still in the mix there with 21% is absolutely mind-blowing to me. Columbus has certainly fell off. They've been a good story this year. Vancouver's definitely there. They got a big game coming up. We're going to cover that later in the episode, but what do you make of these playoff percentages? And these can make some, for some really good playoff matchups.
Yeah, this is nuts. I mean, this time of year, you're always kind of scoreboard watching, but this year you're really in the checking the scores of every game because each game has major implications on the other. I mean, one day you're in the playoffs, the next day you're out by a point. It has been absolutely insane over this past week of how the wildcard race in both conferences has been. And like you said, the Montreal Canadiens having a 40% chance at making the playoffs is crazy. If you had to tell me that at the beginning of the season, I wouldn't have believed you. I mean, this team has really picked it up this year, and they're on a bit of a roll right now. I mean, I think they're 6-1-3 in their last few games, getting a lot of points in overtime, which you need around this point in a year. And the reason they have such a big high percentage is because they do have a few games in hand on other teams. So that's why their percentage is 40%, because they still have more games to play than other teams that are in the race. But like you said, it looked like Columbus was going to make a little run at it here. Great story for them, but they have kind of fallen off a little bit. But the Islanders, they're hot right now. They keep continuing to be hot. Every team that is 1, 2, 3 points off right now needs to be on their A game if they want to make the playoffs, and that's what makes it so interesting in the East this year. And out West, it's just as interesting, with the Vancouver Canucks having a 55% chance at making the playoffs. I mean, I'd say everybody kind of seen that coming. I mean, Vancouver's kind of, has a really good team. You can't put it past them. And I think a lot of people suspect them to make the playoffs. And if they do miss out, it'll be a big shock to everyone. But teams that have kind of surprised everybody, St. Louis, they're kind of always in the mix here in the West every year. And Calgary, a team that's always in the mix, a team that a lot of people suspected to do really bad this year, has done really good with what they have. And their rookie goaltender, Dustin Wolf, has done a great job of carrying them to the position they're in today. And I think this is going to be crazy to watch over these next couple of weeks. And who knows, this could be completely different in a week's time.
It absolutely can. I think it could be different tomorrow. Like the whole playoff, all the matchups, everything just keeps changing, right? Even divisional leads. We're going to get into that later in the video as well, but it's been absolutely unbelievable. And again, these are just projections, but the one thing that stands out to me based on the projections and how everything's going, these teams are separated by 1 point, or maybe it's a tiebreaker that's going to separate them at the end of the year. So it's been absolutely unbelievable. When you take a look at the standings in the Eastern Conference right now, it is crazy. There are 3 teams are still fighting for that first place spot in the Atlantic: the Florida Panthers, Toronto Maple Leafs, and Tampa Bay Lightning. Any one of those 3 teams I think could finish at the top by the end of the year. My pick is going to be, again, invested interest, Toronto Maple Leafs. I just think that they're picking it up at the right time now. All of a sudden, Washington's kind of run away with things all season. They're a very hard team to play against, very heavy team. But again, the wildcard position, Ottawa, I believe they're going to make it. They could even somehow sneak their way, right? I know there's not too many games left into a divisional playoff spot, depending how some of the other teams play. But Montreal's right there in the mix. People didn't really expect that. They've certainly taken a step this year, right? And then when you look at the rest of the teams here in the mix, the Rangers, the Islanders, they're not doing themselves any favors throughout the course of this season. They should probably, in theory, be higher in the standings. They're not. Detroit has not been playing well. Columbus has fallen off. It's been crazy. When you look at the West, same type of things going on. Minnesota is going to be a wild card team, which is absolutely insane this year. Vancouver's still with games in hand on some teams, so it looks like they could make the playoffs still, just being 1 point behind. So it's going to get really interesting. And one thing to know, at the time we're recording this, Vancouver is playing the New York Rangers. Insane game with huge playoff implications, so that is going to be wild. And again, if you take a look at some of the playoff odds, it's absolutely unbelievable around the league, and some of the playoff matchups could get very interesting. Winnipeg could end up playing Calgary or Vancouver, right? Like, that's going to be a great matchup. KC, I'm really looking forward to some of these playoff matchups. And something that I think is very interesting looking at the Eastern Conference, and I want your take on this as well, is there's some teams that are hot and there's some teams that are not, right? And when you look at the current standings, it is reflecting that. Obviously, the hottest teams are in the wild card, and some of the teams that are falling off are not, but they're still definitely in the mix. Who do you think makes the playoffs in the wild card spot, specifically in the Eastern Conference this year?
I think the people who make it are in it right now. I think Ottawa is an absolute wagon since the Four Nations face-off, and there's not going to be a team that stops them. Tkachuk has been red hot ever since he's put on the USA jersey, so this guy's going to carry them to a wild card spot. And I think the Montreal Canadiens, man, you can't count them out. I know I have a little bit of invested interest here, but this team has been on fire, and it's not just their top six that's been lighting it up. We've been getting production from their bottom six. A great story with Brendan Gallagher scoring one for his late mom who just passed away. Josh Anderson picking it up as well. This bottom six for the Montreal Canadiens has been on fire, and obviously the main guy, Lane Hutson, 20-year-old defenseman, has been on fire for the Montreal Canadiens this season. I can't believe the story that is coming out from him right now. I mean, he has so many assists this season. It is crazy. Whenever you see this guy get the puck, you kind of sit up in your seat. You're like, okay, something's about to happen, because that's just the type of player he is. And I think that's the reason the Montreal Canadiens are going to stay in. Also, Montembeault has been really good lately. I mean, he has been making some crazy game-saving saves ever since that Four Nations break where he sat on the bench for Team Canada. So I think this guy is going to have a great second half of the season. But like you said, I've invested interest, but you can't count out this Islanders team right now. They're kind of digging in and going for it. I mean, look at them. They're 6-3-1 in their last game, in the last few games. They have been on fire. Obviously, big game between them and Montreal the other night, went to overtime. So if they won that game, this whole standings could be a complete, or if they won that game in regulation, this could look completely different right now. So that was a big game there. But a lot of teams, like you said, the Rangers, a team that a lot of people suspected to be really good, have kind of fallen off right now. And the East is looking really interesting, and it could look different in a few days' time. But I mean, with how hot the top two teams are right now in the wild card in Ottawa and Montreal, I can't see it changing anytime soon.
No, and I think, like what you said, like even with the Rangers, very interesting story this year. It looked like it was going to be the last kick at the can for that core group of players, and they blew it up by November and December, right? So it's been a very weird year for them, and I feel like they're just kind of retooling for it next year. But things have gotten very interesting, and it can change by tomorrow, like you said, with some of the matchups at the time we're recording this on Saturday going down tonight. Huge playoff implications in the first game there, Vancouver and the New York Rangers. Whoever loses that game, things are looking pretty bad for you, right? When you look down the list, the Islanders are playing the Flames. Again, same situation, the exact same situation, right? Both those teams need that win. Florida's playing Washington. That's going to be a tough game for Florida. They're missing players due to injury and suspension. They need to win. If they don't, the Leafs are playing one of the worst teams in the league tonight in the Nashville Predators. If they pick up a win, they're first in the Atlantic Division. Ottawa's playing New Jersey. If either of these teams lose, New Jersey still has a bit of a lead in the a divisional playoff spot, but they could very easily lose that, and they have been playing somewhat well the last little while since losing a ton of players due to injury. Detroit has to win tonight. Edmonton wants to pick it up. They have some injury troubles as well. There is a lot of playoff implications tonight in these games. Every game matters for the rest of the season. I think it's been such an exciting season, and Casey, to touch on that, it's been such an exciting season, right? Like, so many underdog teams are in the playoffs right now, in a playoff spot compared to some other teams on the outside looking in that everyone thought would have been in the playoffs. The rookie class has been unbelievable. Ovi is going for Gretzky's record this year and looks like he's going to break it, right? The wild card race was unbelievable. We had the Four Nations face-off. It's been an incredible season. Any final thoughts on this season as a whole? We can get into some stats too. I mean, Lane Hudson, your boy, has been unbelievable. But any final thoughts on this season, or maybe Lane Hudson, what he's been able to do for this rookie class as well? Because it's been very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you have Celebrini in this class as well, where unfortunately the Sharks are nowhere in this wild card race, but they will be in a few years' time. I put my money on that. But Lane Hudson, obviously, what he's doing as a defenseman right now, we haven't seen in a very, very long time. And just the production that he's doing on the back end for the Montreal Canadiens, coming in his rookie season, quarterbacking the power play, threading passes through the middle of the ice. This guy has really paved the way for a new style defenseman. A lot of haters on this guy the beginning of the year, and he's proven them all wrong this season, and it's just great to see. And like you said, this is a great season for hockey fans in general, because the Four Nations face-off brought a lot of new fans, especially from the United States, to the game of hockey. And what a better time than get into it right now, where all these teams are in the mix for the playoffs. It's super exciting. I can't wait to see how it plays out over these next couple of weeks, and Montreal will be in a playoff spot by the end of it.
I think it's going to be a crazy race to the end. And I think the reason it's so exciting is not only because the games are exciting, they have so many playoff implications. So many teams and their fan bases, as a result, are still in the mix. So many people still have invested interest in the season. We want to make the playoffs. So it's been really, really exciting. But we want to hear what you have to say about this season, everything that's been going on, and the crazy, unbelievable playoff race that's happening right now. I haven't seen something like this in a very long time. So let us know in the comment section below what you think about this season. And if you haven't yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything going on in the NHL.